Very warm welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in North America and around the globe. My name's Mike Embley. Our top stories. Claims that countless civilians were killed in Mosul during last year's coalition airstrikes against the so-called IS militants.
No one destroyed us except the coalition. Look, this was one of my daughters who got killed, and this was one of my sons.
Anger in Armenia as parliament blocks the opposition leader's bid to become prime minister. He's called for strikes across the country. YouTube stars encouraging students to cheat. Some are being paid to promote essay rating websites to students. And Facebook says it's developing a new privacy control allowing users to delete their browsing history. Hello, 9 months since the group known as Islamic State was defeated in its stronghold of Mosul, and it is still not clear how many Iraqi civilians died in the battle. The range of estimates is huge, from at least 1,000 to more than 10,000, and reports suggest many were killed in coalition airstrikes. So far, only the US and Australia have accepted any responsibility for civilian deaths. The official line from Britain's Ministry of Defence is that officials have seen no evidence. Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale reports now from Mosul.
This is the graveyard of the group called Islamic State. It's also the tomb of an unknown number of civilians. The old city of Mosul, where the extremists made their last stand, defeated with the help of unrelenting coalition airstrikes. Making their way through the shattered shell of this city, a team of Iraqi volunteers is trying to clear up the chaos. This was also home to tens of thousands of people trapped in the fighting. 9 months on, it's still a toxic wasteland, littered not just with bombs, but bodies too. Well, looks like children in there. There's a body here. They say they pulled out 130 from here. They could be IS fighters and their families, or the civilians they corralled to use as human shields. And next door, they've just found more. Well, in this one room, they think they found the remnants of 30 bodies. There's unexploded bombs around here, so they have to be careful, but there is also the stench of death. They think this remains of one body is of a girl. Signs are that there were ISIS fighters here, but also civilians. IS suicide belts lie strewn in the rubble, but many innocents were killed alongside them.
There are a lot of victims from the airstrikes, and a lot of them are still buried under the rubble. We cannot pull them out with our bare hands.
The coalition dropped or fired nearly 30,000 munitions on this one city. Mostly American bombs, but British ones too. The Ministry of Defence insists it's seen no evidence it caused any civilian casualties. But a source inside the coalition has told us that's simply not true. We've used an actor's voice to protect his identity.
It's impossible to conduct a bombing campaign in highly populated areas without killing civilians. I'm certain, from what I've seen and what I know, that British airstrikes have caused civilian casualties on several occasions. To suggest they have not, as has been done, is nonsense.
Our source told us of an RAF strike on a truck bomb here in East Mosul last year. He said 2 civilians were almost certainly killed in the blast, but the MOD insists those killed were highly probably IS fighters. Uncertainty from the air and on the ground too. This man says in the aftermath, women and men were screaming. He says some of them were wounded. Others told us IS were in the area, but the MOD refused our request to view the cockpit video. nor will it reveal the coordinates of other British airstrikes. But back in the old city, there's no doubt that many were killed by coalition bombs.
No one destroyed us except the coalition. Look, this was one of my daughters who got killed, and this was one of my sons.
Where did they take care of civilians? There were just families in this house, and in that house over there. So why did it get hit? Was ISIS there?
The MOD says it took extreme care but can't eliminate the risk to civilians. But it's never had anyone like this on the ground to investigate. There are just estimates of the numbers of civilians killed. What looks like a macabre team photo is how these locals are trying to keep track of the dead. The coalition did help rid this city of the scourge of IS, but at what cost? Jonathan Beale, BBC News, Mosul.
Let's quickly round up some more of the main news for you. The most senior Roman Catholic to be charged with sexual abuse is to face 2 separate trials in Australia. Cardinal George Pell is the Vatican treasurer. He's 76. At a brief hearing in Melbourne, defence and prosecution agreed he should face 1 trial relating to his time as a priest in Ballarat in the 1970s and another from when he was Archbishop of Melbourne 20 years later. At least 7 people have been killed by militants north of Baghdad. Security forces are scouring the town of Tamir for suspected members of the so-called Islamic State group. The government has denied a claim by IS that it had taken control of the area. In the annual May Day protests in Paris, police have arrested nearly 200 masked demonstrators. Reports suggest anarchist groups broke away from a peaceful rally to set fire to vehicles and smash shop windows in protest at President Macron's economic reforms. 4 people, including a police officer, were slightly hurt. The leader of Armenia's protest movement, Nikol Pashinyan, has insisted peaceful protests will continue. The governing party has blocked his efforts to become Prime Minister. In the coming hours, crowds are expected to take to the streets again in the capital, Yerevan. Mr. Pashinyan has called for a general strike. Lebu Diseko has the story.
They'd gathered here to watch what they see as democracy done. Instead, thousands of supporters of Nikol Pashinyan were left stunned and disappointed as Parliament voted against the popular opposition leader as Prime Minister. He got just 45 of the 53 votes he needed. For many, it's an attempt by the ruling Republican Party to block the people's choice. Mr. Pashinyan is now calling for a campaign of civil disobedience, a general strike from Wednesday morning with roads and airports blocked. It's a far cry from last week's celebrations on the streets of the capital, Yerevan. Scenes of joy after the unpopular Prime Minister Serge Sarkisyan was forced to resign. It was called the Velvet Revolution, change won without a bullet fired. And it followed weeks of protest demanding the Prime Minister step down. Nikol Pashinyan was the man many wanted in that job. Earlier, he warned MPs of major unrest if they failed to vote him in.
Armenian people are reviving. We are in an awakening period. This awakening is national and it's unstoppable.
Mr. Pashinyan is now urging supporters to stay on the streets to stop the ruling party from stealing the people's victory. He says a revolution of love and tolerance continues. Lebu Diseko, BBC News.
A day after a BBC investigation into the illegal sale of codeine cough syrup, Nigeria's government has banned its import and production. Thousands of young people are sourcing it without prescription, often from employees of pharmaceutical companies, and becoming addicted. Mark Zuckerberg has told Facebook's annual conference for developers the company is working on a new privacy control that will allow users to delete their browsing history. Responding to the uproar over the misuse of millions of people's personal data by the political consultancy Cambridge Analytica, Facebook CEO called it a major breach of trust. He insisted the platform was taking a number of steps to make sure it never happens again.
First, as you all know, we're restricting the data that developers will be able to request from people. Second, we need to make sure that we find any other bad apps that are out there. So we're currently in the process of investigating every single app that had access to a large amount of people's information before we made these big changes in 2014. And if we find anything suspicious, we're going to bring in independent auditors to do a full audit. And if any data was misused, then we'll ban that developer, and we will tell anyone whose data was affected.
Mark Zuckerberg, of course. Let's go live to New York and to Michael Nunes, Deputy Tech Editor at Mashable. Michael, good to talk to you. What did you make of this? There were a lot of nervous developers going to this conference this year, weren't there?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people expected Mark Zuckerberg to address the Cambridge Analytica data scandal up front, and to his credit, he actually did. He started the conference off with several thoughts about the scandal, and then with each segment, with each announcement, I think he cushioned those announcements with how they were going to address privacy concerns in the future.
And do you think it will, the announcements will address those concerns?
I do. I think some of it will. I mean, I think, so for example, Facebook announced that they're going to be launching a dating service in the near future. I think that's very clearly a strategy that they're employing to gather more information about people's romantic lives, and so in that sense, there's still data mining, which was much of the concern for most people. So in that sense, they're not really addressing what people are most concerned about. I think, the reality is that Facebook is going to continue to operate by this data mining principle. They just need to give users a better understanding of how that information is being used, where it's being shared to, and give them an opportunity to opt out in some cases.
Because, to be plain, data mining is their business.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think Facebook makes its money by profiling its users and then selling those profiles, whether they're anonymized or not. They sell that information to advertisers, and so the more information they have about you, your political leanings, your any of your tendencies or your personal beliefs, they're able to use that as a tool for basically emotional manipulation to get you to buy products. That is ultimately what brings Facebook value.
How seriously did you take his assertions that he'd find the bad apps that misuse data, he'd bring in independent arbiters, and he'd ban some developers?
I think that some of the steps were absolutely warranted and should be commended, but I think anyone that's been following the Cambridge Analytica scandal closely understands that that was just one actor among tens of thousands, and there's no getting that information back. That information has already been disseminated across the world, and data firms are going to use that going forward because they've already been given access to that stuff. So I think in a lot of senses it's too little too late, but you have to at least commend Facebook for trying to address some of these concerns, and definitely some of their announcements today were centered around privacy and giving users more control over the information that they're sharing with data, and that has been very awesome in my books. That's very commendable.
Michael, just briefly, in mainstream media here, we tend to talk about Facebook as if it is social media. But of course, for a whole load of young people who are the new customers he needs, they have nothing to do with Facebook, largely because their parents, their grandparents, their teachers are on it.
Yes, so I'm sorry, so can you restate the question, please?
Well, just basically, we tend to talk about Facebook as if it is social media. But for a whole load of young people out there, they have nothing to do with it, do they?
Ah, I see. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there has been a migration of younger people from Facebook to other apps. The problem is that Facebook owns a lot of its greatest competitors, or what were formerly its greatest competitors. So something like Instagram, which is where a lot of young people spend their time nowadays, is actually owned by Facebook. And so is WhatsApp, which is another mobile application that Facebook bought for a lot of money. And it's because their user growth was growing at a faster rate than Facebook's once had. So people are leaving Facebook, the platform. They're using other things in in place of Facebook, such as Messenger and WhatsApp and Instagram. The problem is Facebook owns all of those things, and they kind of have a stranglehold on social networks in general.
Point taken. Michael, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to you for being with us. Stay with us if you can. Much more to come on BBC News, including this. Scotland moves to cut binge drinking. It's the first country in the world to bring in minimum pricing for alcohol. Very good to have you with us on BBC News. One main headline this hour: there are fresh claims that countless civilians were killed in Mosul during last year's coalition airstrikes against the so-called IS militants. A BBC investigation has discovered that some stars on the video sharing platform YouTube are being paid to promote essay writing websites to school children and students on a big scale. A company based in Ukraine is paying online personalities to encourage people to pay for essays. Britain's Universities Minister has told the BBC the revelations undermine education and said YouTube, owned by Google, has a moral responsibility to act. Our education editor, Bramwell Jeffries, has this exclusive report.
What's going on, guys? Boy, I'll pie beat.
In action, we're back in the action, boys. All right!
YouTube channels reach millions each day.
I'm back with another prank.
We're checking out a compilation of really stupid people.
The creators have huge influence. Influence that business wants to buy.
Want to give a shout out to all you. I'm going to ask for 5k likes if you want a part 2 this time.
Our investor uncovered the YouTube stars selling cheating, paid by a company in Ukraine, promoting a service to students that could land them in serious trouble, targeting teenagers using the people they trust.
And don't waste your time doing your essays. Let these people do it for you.
If you guys are struggling in school or college, check out edubirdy.com to hire a super smart guy to do your essays for you.
Super smart geek. Plagiarism free. Did y'all hear me?
They're helping you cheat. You won't get in any trouble, guaranteed. That it's going to get you an A+.
This is clearly wrong. It's clearly wrong because it is enabling cheating, potentially on an industrial scale. It's normalizing cheating.
We're not talking about the video ads you usually see. These are YouTubers themselves talking about pranks, gaming, dating. Then they tell you about a company called EduBirdie.
Okay, so I've got to quickly interrupt this video and give a shout out to the sponsor, edubirdy.com. You know, if you guys are playing too much Fortnite and you have no time to write your essays,
go to edubirdy.com, 100% plagiarism free. And right now, I've just arrived back at university.
This is for every school kid that is watching my videos. I know there's loads of you out there.
We found more than 250 channels with videos sponsored by EduBirdie. Videos viewed hundreds of millions of times. And that's just the ones in English. Some YouTubers say they'd never accept this kind of sponsorship.
How do you balance your studies with your social life?
Ibs and Courtney are students at Cambridge University. They promote hard work and study on YouTube channels. Having seen the EduBirdie ads, were they in any doubt this was the selling of cheating?
No, not at all. In plain sight, I think as soon as you hear it, whether the influencer mentioned cheating or not, you know, okay, I'm not doing this work, I'm about to hand in work that I didn't write. It's not copy and pasted, it won't be plagiarized, but it's not my work, it's cheating.
How powerful is that message when it comes from a YouTuber you trust?
You'll see big YouTubers saying it, and that can influence small YouTubers to promote it as well, and then massive impact will have on young children, teenagers. And now imagine you have all these essays to do, and now you have a solution that is being promoted by your favourite person.
So how easy is it for students to buy essays? We asked EduBirdie to write 2 from scratch, one English GCSE, the other degree level. We got them marked, a C for the English essay and 60% for the university assignment. Not quite the A+ promised on YouTube. EduBirdie told us YouTubers had creative choice and total freedom in what they said. And it was clear that anything obtained through the website should only be used as a sample or a reference.
I'm going to be asking girls to tell things about boys they don't like. I've been on Snapchat.
But it's not just adults being offered cash. This 15-year-old is one of several children who've accepted EduBirdie money.
It basically writes your essays for you, and it's 100% plagiarism free.
His mum told us she was shocked. She didn't know her son was taking sponsorship.
Go to edubirdy.com, 100% plagiarism free.
So insidious. They're making it look like it's cool. It's actually a lifestyle choice.
We showed some of the videos to the university's minister.
These are the people to do it for you, written by doctors.
Cheating is wrong. It undermines quality, it undermines standards. Never mind what EduBirdie says, it is wrong. This is something that is corrosive to education, and I think YouTube has got to step up to the plate and exercise some responsibility here.
I wanted to speak to someone at YouTube's London headquarters, where some of their most successful channels are on display. Instead, in a statement, the company said, creators may include paid endorsements if the product or service they are endorsing complies with our advertising policies. And the company added they would be working with YouTubers, so they better understand that in-video promotions must not promote dishonest activity.
If you can't be asked to write your essays.
The perfect option for you.
None of the YouTubers would do an interview. Alpayb told us whether a student wants to cheat or not, it's totally their choice. Everyone's got their own hustle. Bronwyn Jeffries, BBC News.
Just quickly, let's round up some more of the main news for you. A fire in a skyscraper in Sao Paulo in Brazil has left at least one person dead. The 26-story building was engulfed in flames and then collapsed. This was an abandoned office block, but it had been occupied by about 150 squatters. Firefighters fear more people may have been trapped inside and others killed in the collapse. Gates have been installed in Venice to help control the flow of tourists at key attractions. The city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and attracts about 30 million visitors a year. That, of course, means large queues and clogged streets. The city's mayor says he's just trying to ensure the safety of visitors and residents. The Scottish Government has become the first country in the world to introduce a minimum price for alcohol. It's trying to stop excessive drinking. The cost of some of the cheapest drinks has now tripled. Some think all this will hit people on low incomes disproportionately. Here are some of the key facts.
All of the evidence says that while it's not going to solve the problem on its own, without action that targets the affordability of alcohol, then we won't make the progress we need to see.
It started off about 4 cans of beer a day, and then that started to progress to crates of beer near enough every day. Then it was a bottle of wine every night, and some beer, and then it was like maybe you could get 3 bottles for a tenner.
When alcohol prices rise, deaths from alcohol fall. And when alcohol prices fall, deaths from alcohol rise. Every time. So people may think they're not influenced by price, but they definitely are.
We have a lot of customers who are on a very, very low income, a very tight income, and they don't have a lot of money to spend, and maybe on a Friday or a Saturday they want a bottle of cheap cider because that's all they can afford, and I think it's quite unfair on them.
Contrasting views there on minimum pricing for alcohol in Scotland. Plenty more about it on our website. That's at bbc.com/news. More there anytime on all the news, of course. Thank you for watching.